Hello everyone, my name is William Dean. I'm back with my second episode about Eagles. This episode will be about the Eagles of 2016, and a couple of things I'd like to go over before we get into the program itself. I just want to talk about a couple of emails that I received from Chris Martin, who heads up the Eagle program in New Hampshire. In 2014, I helped identify a new male eagle to the Hinsdale nest in New Hampshire, just over the border from Massachusetts. And he sent me an email about a month ago, and it was about this bird being injured. A woman found it in her backyard, and it had a broken wing, so she brought it to a veterinary hospital, and they had put a pin in it, and where they put the pin was the equivalent of putting a pin in a forearm on a person. That's where it was on the bird. And it's going to be a while for this bird to come back to get rehabilitated. And already at the nest, at the Hinsdale nest, it's been reported that there's a male courting the female so that they can continue on and have babies and stuff like that. He should be out, I would say, probably in January, no later than end of January, early February. So whether he goes back to challenge the new male in that nest is to be seen. I don't know what might happen. You never can tell. And all right, that covers a couple of emails. Now, a couple other things I want to show you is I do broadcasts from my home, and I do broadcasts from the field. I haven't done a whole lot of them, but people have watched them and they enjoyed them. And I hope to do more in the future. And by doing more in the future, maybe every 2 months or something like that, the more I do them, the more I'll get people to watch, I hope. Now, some of the things that I use is what they call Teradek. It's a transmitter. You use it out in the field, and what it does, I use a program on my iPad, and it sends a signal to the iPad, and it uses the data line, and it sends it to a server. Now, what a server does, it takes that information and allows people to go to that server's address, access it, and watch it. And I can have up to, I don't know, I think it's like 60 people at one time or something like that. So that's what I use out in the field. Now, when I'm at home to do a broadcast, what I'll do is I have another one, this right here. This is another Teradek, and all I do is I plug my internet cable into here and my source into here, which usually is my computer, and I'll do my program. And this here is a mini recorder from Black Magic Design, and what it does, it converts the signal. I have a video camera. Now, when you plug that video camera into your computer, it doesn't recognize the source. So what this does, it converts the signal so that it will be recognized, so you can use it for doing different things. Now, in the future, what I plan to do out in the field, if I'm not doing a live broadcast, what I will do is I'll set up maybe 3 or 4 different cameras, and I'll create a program out there where one of the cameras will be basically inside the nest from a distance, and another camera could be on myself, maybe 10 feet away, and then I'll have another camera set up mid-distance from the nest. So there's a lot of stuff I want to do, and it's going to be interesting, and I hope I get a following because it's really good stuff. Now, behind me here is a picture that I took up in New York. There's a gentleman called Pete Dubacher. I might have mentioned him before. He has a rehab center up there for birds. It's called the Berkshire Bird Paradise and Sanctuary. And he does a lot of work up there. This bird here is called Victoria. He allowed me to go into the pen there. This was maybe 3 years ago. He allowed me to go into the pen, and I just happened to get lucky with the picture, and the lighting was perfect, and it turned out to be a great picture. If you look on the, just above the talons there on the ankle area, you'll see a blue band. Now, that indicates that bird is been tagged from New York State. Now, this bird's mate is called the General, and between the two of them, even though they're injured and they can't fly and be released, they still produce babies. And that's a pretty good thing that he's got going on up there. Now what we're going to do now is probably get into the program, and there are 2016 Eagles, and I got a lot of A lot of stuff going on, probably about almost 600 slides here. So some of them I might go through quickly. There might be some redundancy in there, but I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. My time with the Bird of Freedom Presents Eagles of 2016. And this photo, this cover photo here, was taken up at Barton Cove. And I think you'd have to agree it's a very beautiful picture of this bird in flight. Okay, we're going to move on to the next slide. This is up at Gate 43 at the Quabbin Reservoir, and this was in January. And this is an immature eagle. And here's 3 eagles flying together, and this is 2 mature eagles along with the immature. This is over by the boat launch at Gate 43 at the Quabbin. Again, same area, by the boat launch. This is one of their favorite perch trees that this bird's flying up into. This is one sitting on the ice. Immature, he's probably maybe 3 to 4 years old. I would think more to the 3 side. That I determined that by the color of the bill and the feathers, whether there's a lot of black and white in there. This is the nice perch tree that they have at the boat launch at Gate 43 again. This was a nest at the boat launch 2 years ago. They used this nest and it produced some eggs, but the eggs failed. They don't know, the information that I received, they don't know why it failed, but the eggs were broken, so they don't know if a predator got in there or whether they were just fell apart from the environment, whether we had storms or whatever could have damaged them. Okay, he's flying down from the perch, heading away from Gate 43, going out towards the Baffle Dam, which is still located at Gate 43. Now, this is all what I'm showing you here is January, February, it's all together. I'm not going to stay with one nest and go back to the other nest. So what we got here is, this is the oxbow. On my way to work, there's 3 different places I can stop. I can stop at the oxbow, which is close to my work, the Muller Bridge in Holyoke, and then there's the Chicopee River. I'm crossing from Wilbraham into Ludlow. And those are the 3 areas I look at on the way to work. And that's what this is that you're seeing now. This is the oxbow. The oxbow again. This is a bird. I was lucky to get him in the frame here. He was flying through trees, so it was hard to focus on him because of the trees being in the way. This was at the Chicopee River where it goes from Wilbraham into Ludlow. I believe this, not just this bird, but there's another bird too, probably the mate. I believe they come up, to follow the Chicopee River up from the West Springfield nest down there. Here he flew over the bridge. We're back to the oxbow here again. Okay, we're back to Gate 43. I believe this is February. This bird made a couple of passes, immature, probably looks like not quite 1 year old. He made a couple of passes at the water, but he wasn't successful at grabbing anything. This here is up at Princeton, Mass, at the Wachusett Meadow Audubon Sanctuary. I did a program up there, and I had a small group of people, but we had a fun time, and they enjoyed the presentation. Here we're back at the oxbow. Actually, you know what? That's not the oxbow. That's the Muller Bridge. There we go. Now in the background there, you've got the Mount Tom Range. This is the Muller Bridge nest on the Holyoke side. Still the Muller Bridge here. Now, something I started doing, I usually don't show anything but eagles, but I'm starting to show other birds that I might see, especially hawks. I've seen a lot of hawks this past year. And this hawk here is a red shoulder hawk. He appears to have a squirrel that he had captured. And now this here is another bird. I believe it might be the same red shoulder hawk because this is an area I see him in all the time. This here, he's got a mouse that he brought up on top of a telephone pole. And you can see he's just taking it down in one whole bite here. Back to the oxbow. This was a dreary day. This was February, I believe, and you get a lot of evaporation from the snow and everything, so you get a lot of moisture in the air. And that was a nesting pair. Now, here we are up in Hogback Mountain, Southern Vermont Natural History Museum. I went up there and they had not a grand opening, but an open house. They had an open house up there, and I participated in that. Mike Clough and Ed Metcalf. Ed Metcalf is the president, and Mike Clough is the assistant director. And they have several kinds of birds up there that can't be released, they can't fly. This is Mike Clough right here. This girl on the right, I don't remember her name, but she went down to Texas for some training on wildlife. Now what I got here is a video of, actually, there we go. Let me go back to it. But what you got here, you got immature on this side and a mature on this side. And you can see the difference in the mature, the eyes are yellow, and the immature, they're more to the green side. This immature is probably 3 years old. And I just want to point out a little bit of a difference there. All right, moving on. This is a kestrel, one of the birds they have up there at the museum. A volunteer. These volunteers here are people who come in and they learn how to handle the birds. This is a hawk, a red-tailed hawk, on my way to work out through Granby, Massachusetts, and I seen this bird. He had come down and grabbed something. I believe it turned out to be a mouse, and he's going to take it up into a tree. There you can see the nice red tail on the bird, and he's going to have lunch. Now this here is the hoyok nest, and at this time, this has got to be March. They're sitting on eggs at this time. And then this is another red-tailed hawk going through Granby again. And back to the nest in Hoyok. This here is the oxbow on the Connecticut River. This is a nesting pair. And what happened, the nesting pair, I did take a picture. I believe it was, let me see, January, February, March. It was in April, and it was published in the Northampton Gazette. It showed one of these birds sitting in a nest, presumably on an egg. That nest never produced, and which was a shame. So here they are sitting up in the trees. Now this bird here is back to the Chicopee River. And there's a lot of fog and evaporation going on there. This is another red-shouldered hawk, and I got to say, this is probably the same one that I see up in the Oxbow area, because he's got I'm not sure how big their territory is, but the distance from this position here and where I took photos of him earlier, maybe quarter a mile, half a mile tops. A couple nice shots. I just stopped my car and took some pictures of him. Back to the hoyok nest. Still at the hoyok nest. And there's a nice shot. You can see one of the birds up here and the other sitting on the nest. And they'll take turns sitting on the nest. Where are we here? I'm not sure where this is yet. Well, that's the Quabbin Reservoir. Again, Gate 43. I spent a lot of time up there earlier in the year. Probably the first 3 months of the 2016. Here's the two birds here. And I would imagine they're mates, obviously, but I don't know where their nest might be. Okay, here's a little video. I had walked into the other side. All the way on the other side is the boat launch, Gate 43. And I got my stuff set up here. This bird here came through, passed by, and It's got a burnt orange band on its ankle, and I did identify it. And what was pretty cool about it was this bird came from the nest at gate 8, and this bird has a sibling, and I got photos and videos of both these birds when they're in the nest and when they were fledged. There you can get a better look at the band. I believe this is a two-year-old bird. This is a sand bluff nest at gate 43. Quabbin Reservoir. I believe this is taken over by the Windsor Dam, where they have the DCR boats and the police boats in a little cove there. And we're back up to the oxbow again. Now what you got here, you got 3 eagles, 2 immatures, and in the center you got a mature. And the thing about eagles, they like to steal from each other. Here you got 1, 2, 3, 4 eagles, because this mature had picked up a fish in the water and they're chasing, they're going to try and steal it. A couple more immatures. This is all at the oxbow. You can see this immature here picked up something out of the water, and he brought it back, and they're fighting over it. I wasn't able to identify the bands on this bird. It was a Massachusetts bird. Very, very nice color to him. Now we're up at Barton Cove. Now he's carrying a large stick here. They're building their nest. This is in February, and in March they'll usually start sitting on incubating the eggs. So they're going to take the time to build up the nest. Now this was just an immature that was coming through the area. You can see the greens from the pines. Brought some nesting material in there. More branches. These nests get very large. Usually around between 6 to 8 feet in diameter and as many as 3 to 4 feet deep. All right, here I put 2 camera clips together. I slowed this one down. And just as he enters the nest, you'll see the other clip. Thought that was pretty neat. Hope to be doing more of that in the future. This here is up in Hinsdale, New Hampshire. My friend Chris Martin, who heads up the Eagle program in New Hampshire, me and him got together because we were told that there was a new nest in this area 2 miles up from the other nest there. So we went out in the canoes and we investigated. This bird here is probably about 3 years old. We just happened to see it. And we're going to head upstream. Now this is a previous nest that was used for about 2 years, and it never produced anything. And we think this is the same group, same 2 birds that abandoned this nest and went up further. Probably too much traffic coming through, and they disturbed the nest. Now this is a new nest that we came across. This is located 2 miles up from the Vernon Dam on the Connecticut River. Now if you look over here to the right, this is the bird we saw previously, the lower part of the river. What's unusual about this is this bird is so close to this nest, and you have eagle incubating, and then you probably the male over here, and usually would chase that bird out because it would be an intruder. But something that I've come to notice in others is that they think birds hanging around like this are babies that they had previously a couple of years, and they're coming back to the nest. And it was always thought that this didn't happen, but it appears that things like this do happen. Now, I wasn't able to find out, I got photos of the bands, but I wasn't able to find out exactly where it came from. But another gentleman later on got photos, and they were able to identify both birds in this nest. This is at West Townsend, Vermont. It's about 20 miles north of Brattleboro. Very beautiful nest right on the river there. Army Corps of Engineers Dam. This was early in the year. I'd have to say this is probably March, mid-March possibly. Incubating. Now they're going to swap out duties here. Now we're back to the Hoyok nest. This is all in chronological order. Now if you look closer, you can see two heads here, two babies. Get a better shot of them a little bit later on. Back to the Barton Cove nest, still incubating. Going down and went down and got some nesting material. They're always trying to improve the nest. You get a lot of stuff rotting in there, prey that they bring in, fish, mostly fish. 80% fish is what they feed on. At Barton Cove, they got the dam right down there, and they usually go down there and grab some fish or some eels. Still incubating. This video here was shot through my point and shoot camera through my spotting scope. Immature passing through the area. Where I'm sitting here is up on the side of a hill, so these birds are up in the air maybe 50 feet, 60 feet. Hoyok nest again. You'll be able to see the babies in the nest a little bit better because they're bigger here. There you go, there's a couple of shots right there. There's one of the parents with them. Now this is back to the Barton Cove nest, right over here. A lot of dreary days out there in the early part of the year with all the snow melting, evaporation, moisture in the air. Here they are, babies are being fed. You can see them right down here. All right, we're going to move on. This was at a church up in Belchertown. A gentleman named Don Davis, a couple of years back, and I believe it was 2013 when I did my first presentation at the Quabbin Reservoir. I had met him, and I asked him if I could call on him to explain to people what he did some years ago, building nests on the Connecticut River from Connecticut all the way up through Vermont and New Hampshire. And this is my video set up here, and right on this part here, that's my Teradek Video U that I use for broadcasting, which I was doing that day. This here is Don Davis, and I donated a couple of framed photos to the church. We had a real good time up there. My wife accompanied me, and Don's a real nice guy. All right, here we are at the West Townsend nest again. This nest produced two babies. There's one right there. From what I could see, the babies look like they might be maybe 2-3 days apart at the most. Now we got a fish coming in. Looks like a sucker. They like getting them fish up around 18 inches, which suckers are basically about that size. A full-grown eagle will usually consume anywhere between 1.5 and 2 pounds of fish a day. to survive. Here you got the two babies, and you can see the difference. The one on the right, it's got a little bit darker down to it, and it appears to be the older one. Here they are again. Here comes one of the birds bringing nesting material up to the nest. Now, here I was on my way back from West Townsend, and I'm passing through Brattleboro, and there's a bridge that connects Brattleboro, Vermont to Hinsdale, New Hampshire, and as I'm passing over this bridge, I look up and I see this eagle, so I pull over to the side, and I took a few pictures of that bird. Here we're back to Barton Cove up on the island, a tall pine tree. Again, bringing in more nesting material, twigs, and they're going to move stuff around. You can see the babies right down in here. More sticks being brought in. This Barton Cove nest has been great. This past year, 2016, they fledged 3 babies. Last year was 2 babies, and the 2 previous years to that, it was 3 babies each year. The parents are great. They supply plenty of food. A lot of times the male will bring in twigs or whatever, and he'll think about arranging it his way, but the female will change that around and put things the way she wants them. There you see a couple of babies right there. This here, I believe, is back at the Oxbow on the Connecticut River in Northampton. At this point, the nest has failed and they're just hanging out. Nice shot, passing by the boats. Now apparently right here they got fish there. One of the eagles had already eaten on it, so the other comes in, take its turn. Appeared to be a pretty good sized fish too. I would say close to 20 inches, 24 inches possibly. Back to Barton Cove. Now here you're going to see all 3 babies together. There you go. And when you're out there in the woods and you see this, sometimes you think you see the 3 babies, you're not sure, and it's not until you get home and you edit your video and your photos, and that's when it gets pretty exciting. The reason for the excitement, it's great, it's got 3 babies, and then you can't wait to share that with other people. Still at Barton Cove. Some of the babies eating here. When the babies get to be about maybe 7 or 8 weeks old, maybe even 6 weeks old, they can start feeding themselves. The parents will bring the food in and just leave it, and then they'll take care of it. This is back at the Oxbow. I was out in my canoe this day. Before I went to work, I went out in a canoe and got a couple of shots. This is back at the Muller Bridge. You can see how large the birds are now, the babies. They got all the feathers. The feathers start coming in at about 5 weeks. The first 2 weeks are a light color down. The second 2 weeks are a darker down. And then in the 5th week, they start getting their feathers. This series of shots here was pretty good. And as he gets closer, you can see in the background the nest with the babies in there watching the parent fly up into the tree. I like that shot right there. Again, you can see the babies down here in the lower right. Back to the Barton Cove. Now this year, once the foliage started coming in at Barton Cove, it was difficult to be able to still see the nest. The previous years it was okay, but now the vegetation is really growing and it's going to get more difficult. I would imagine next year is going to be very difficult. I'm going to probably have to start going to find another nest as my main nest, because Barton Cove has been it for past 5 years. Now here we are back at West Townsend. Now what happened up here, one of the wildlife people up in Vermont was up there monitoring the nest, and they sent out an email to myself and Chris saying that it looks like there's only one baby in the nest now. And I went up there to confirm it, and that's what had happened. We don't know what happened to the baby, whether it's sickness, predator. So it did fledge one bird. All right, I'm going through the slides here. Now up at the top you got one of the parents, and down in here you can't see the baby in this photo, but it's there. This was a nice clear day. Baby's popping his head up. Now you see it, it looks like it's making noise or yawning. What that is, on an eagle, it's similar to an owl. It will regurgitate a pellet, and it's arranging it. I was on my way out and I took this photo here. Okay, this is back up to Hinsdale, New Hampshire, the new nest that was located this year. I was a little closer taking these photos. Very windy day. I was probably about 150 yards away. And it turned out that they did have 3 babies in this nest. I could see 2 here, and I wasn't sure if there was a third or not, but another gentleman got a picture of all 3 babies looking over the side of the nest, which was a pretty cool photo. This photo here I took right off my video camera, a frame off my video camera. Right here they're probably about 6 weeks old, because they got the feathers and they still got some down underneath there. Back at the oxbow, see how all the vegetation is starting to come in as the year progresses. Again, these birds, because the nest failed, they're just kind of like hanging out in the oxbow area, feeding and doing whatever else. Here you got the, not the oxbow, excuse me. Here you got Barton Cove, and this is a eel being brought in. The sky was real milky white this day. I've seen them bring in over the years several eels. It's pretty neat to see it. Now, a lot of times you'll see little birds trailing the eagles. That would be either a kingbird, and you also see red-winged blackbirds harassing them a little bit. Here are bringing some more vegetation into the nest. This is up at Turner's Falls. I did a program up there at the oh geez, I can't remember the name of the place, but they got a place up there in Turner's Falls, and I did a program up there. Beautiful, beautiful acoustics in that room. Very old building. Now I did this program. All the programs I do, I don't charge for them, but they wanted to do something. They said, "You have a charity or anything like that?" So I says, "Yeah, the Springfield Rescue Mission." So what they did was donated $100 in my name to the rescue mission. So I thought that was pretty neat of them. And this is the president of their society that they have up there. I'm going to go back. Now this woman here, they called her the Eaglewoman. The reason behind that is many years ago when they had the first nest started up there in Barton Cove, about 20 years ago, they used her property to monitor the nest. And that was the second time I met her. She was a nice lady. Here we are at Barton Cove again. This bird here is probably about 4 years old. Still got a little bit of brown inside the white of the head and the tail. This is Unity Park. On the Turner's Falls side, this is one of the perching trees that they like to use. All right, you see the crows here bothering still immature eagle. I call it a sub-adult because it's probably about 3 years old, maybe 4. Now, for 2 days in October, I believe it was, 2 days in a row I went up there, and there was like 6 eagles, 2 of them being the nesting pair. And this year, they actually banded the 3 fledglings from that nest. I was told in the past they didn't do it because the nest, the tree going up into the nest was not safe. But I guess they reevaluated that and they found that they could go up there safely. One of the eagles passing by, one of the subadults. Now, this here is up at the Hinsdale nest that's 2 miles above the Vernon Dam. They had not, because of all the vegetation, they weren't able to get any pictures of the babies to confirm that there were still 3 babies in there. And that had gone on for a month. So I talked to Chris Martin, the gentleman who's head of the New Hampshire program. Even though this is on the Vermont side, Vermont nest, they have a grants that they received from the power companies up there for Vermont and New Hampshire, and it's a joint program. So I went up there and I confirmed that there were still 3 babies up there. I came in from the north side of the nest. And pretty soon here you'll be able to see the 3 of them. There we go. So he was pretty happy that they still had 3 babies. Chris Martin every year does a report on the eagle population, the nest, how each nest did, whether there's new nests, whether there's old nests that have gone away. And for the past 3 years, I've been included in that report. And he's actually had links to my website so people can visit. And every time that report comes out, my website gets quite a few hits, sometimes well over 1,000 hits. And one hit meaning it's one photograph looked at or one video. Okay, this is still that same nest. Now, as I was leaving the nesting area here, I was headed downriver, and I have to say this is probably one of the parents from that nest because they're right here in the area, and the band was a black one, which indicates it could be Connecticut or Vermont, because sometime back in Vermont they did band. They don't band anymore in Vermont, but at one time they did, and I believe they used black. And you can see right there, it's a black band. All right, here I included some wildlife again. Down at the bottom of the picture, you have some a doe with a fawn, and up above you got the eagle. And I thought it was a pretty cool picture to take. And these deer got awfully close. I could probably less than 20 yards away, and you'll see that in some of these upcoming pictures. That's pretty neat right there. And here's the one of the fledglings from the nest at Barton Cove. And this is how close these deer got to me. There's a couple of fledglings up in a tree. All right, here you got a picture of the eagle down here, and then at the top of the pine tree. There's a nice shot of the doe. They were walking through a lot of mud there on island. The fawn was doing a lot of kid stuff, jumping around. Now if you look here, you can see the burnt orange band on this fledgling. A lot of pictures here. There's a nice shot. Now if you look here, you got 6 feathers. Those are the feathers that they're flight feathers, they call them. They have a lot to do, along with the tail, a lot to do with how they fly, change direction. Okay, this here is when I did I went to M-PACT and I did my first program. This is back at Barton Cove. Now what you're going to see is 3, I can't say this is the 3 fledglings, but you've got one here, you've got one here, and you've got one here. But there are 3 immatures in that photo. There's a nice shot right there. I can see this bird here defecated. Usually right after they defecate, they take off. Get a drink of water. When the babies are in a nest, they don't have to be concerned about what water, because basically they have fish. And there's a lot of water in fish, so they meet their requirements needed. There's quite a few photos here. That's a nice shot of an immature. Now I put my canoe up against the shoreline, and you're going to see a lot of photos with the birds very, very close, because they fly right over my head. What they do, they use the updraft that comes off the water and goes up the side of the hill, and they'll use that for flying. This is one of the nesting eagles, one of the parents, and you're going to see this bird doesn't appear to be banded. And in the background, you'll see one of the nesting birds squawking at it as it flies by. Quite a few shots of this nesting bird. There's a nice one taken off. It's always nice to get some good action shots in there. Now one of the immatures was out there looking for food. Here he came up empty-handed. All he's got is seaweed or weeds. Later on he will be successful. Here he's jumping out of the tree, pulling bark off the tree. Okay, here he's got a pickerel. And he's going to fly away to another tree with it. This is all still at Barton Cove. Now here you got a couple of immatures on the stump here, and later on you're going to see one of them poking his head around. Going through these photos a little bit fast, but there's one squawking. Now if you look at the eye here, it's like a bluish color. That's because that's the nictitating membrane, which goes vertical, all right? And that happens like every 5 seconds. That's to help keep the eye moisturized and protect it from dust. That's a pretty big bird right here. That's got probably a female. Females are larger than the males by usually 40%. They're immature. All right, we're sitting on a stump, and then you can see this one peeking around the corner. There's a crow over here to the left. Eagle's not paying too much attention to him. Another immature. Now this one was right above me. I was on the shoreline. That's why these shots are so close. They're flying right over my head. Now this one, when I had first gotten here at Barton Cove this day, immature was pestering the mature eagle, and now it's the mature eagle that's pestering the immature. A lot of shots that day of the immature eagles. Again, that's a banded eagle, burnt orange, probably from that nest at Barton Cove. Here's a photo I took of the area. Now the nest is right about here on the island. Some of my equipment I use out there. Now here in the distance, this was probably about a quarter of a mile away, but I followed him all the way back. He picked up a fish. It turned out, from what I could tell, it would look like a bass, a very large smallmouth bass. Took it over to the log. And judging by what I see here, that's a smallmouth bass. He ate some of it and then he flew away and came back later and ate some more. It was a beautiful day there. A lot of the lighting was very good. There's that cover shot I had at the beginning of the program. Flew up onto the island. Okay, this is at Unity Park. You got the two nesting birds, one in the background and one up in the tree. And there we go. That's the end of the program again. And thank you very much.